Hey everyone, I'm 17-year-old writer Noah Barfield, author of that absolutely amazing action fantasy novel Legendland, and welcome to Writer's Corner. Thank you for joining me today. Now, today, we are going to talk about villains. Let's talk about villains! Those people that we love and hate and want to see blow up, but also, hey, there's Loki, so, we have conflicted feelings. Anyway, I specifically want to talk about some of the villain types that I recognize and some of their traits, as well as maybe tips on how to write them. I don't know how many I'm going to be able to do, but I'd like to do them all within 10 minutes or less. I don't know how possible that's going to be. Anyway, I'm going to talk quickly. So starting out, the realistic villain. This probably hits me the hardest because you can see them. Like this person, the suspension of disbelief required to imagine this being a real person that could do real harm is less than all the other villains, so I feel they have the greatest impact. And I'm moving my hands around a lot to show impact. One of the greatest realistic villains to me that I have read about, that it makes me the angriest, is Dolores Umbridge from the Harry Potter series. I just want to smack her character around and then lecture everyone involved, because she, to me, is abhorrent and her practices are disgusting, and I wish she would just not be there. But also, I'm thankful that she is, because it gives me a great example of a realistic villain. Now, to help write realistic villains, in my opinion, so you can make them incredibly realistic and people can hate them, or maybe love them, I like to look at past people in history, leaders in history, whether they committed genocide, suppressed, oppressed, legalized, torture, whatever they did. Any of them and figure out how they did it and why did we hate them so much. Also, take a look inside yourself. Any trait that you would not like someone to see or that you find kind of like ugly and want to hide away from the limelight, assuming there are any, of course, and you're not just this complete angel person, then also include that. Maybe a realistic villain is ashamed of their villainness or doesn't know any better. Now, moving on to the cunning villain, the one who, in my opinion, is the most similar to its counterpart, the cunning hero. I find that they're both incredibly similar. They both might be thieves. One just might be a Robin Hood type character, and the other one steals from orphans for their monetary gain. You heard me, right? Steals from orphans. How can you not like that person? You have to dislike them. It's natural. Orphan stealer. Anyway, a cunning villain, in my opinion, needs to be able to think quickly on the feet, have some sense of strategy, and be at least somewhat intelligent. In my opinion, you cannot have a cunning, dastardly villain who is dumb as a rock, assuming that rock is not hyper-intelligent. So, in my opinion, having a cunning villain is someone who, playing a chess game, they're not exceptionally good at chess, per se, but thinking on their feet and being able to strategize somewhat quickly, they can make a move that helps secure their victory within, like 20 seconds that someone didn't see. A cunning villain can look at the easiest escape option or whatever for a hero and see that and stop that from happening. In my opinion, being able to write a cunning villain is much easier if you think to yourself, like, what would I do if I had to trap this person in a room? Or, if they had to get out. Turning someone who is not a villain, who is already cunning, into a heroic, or into an actual villain who is cunning, is one of the most fun things for me, because they didn't start out evil. And I think that's the easiest thing to do with a cunning villain, is through their cunning, they're realistic in their approach. So they plan out, and then they just, through their circumstances and through their own greed, and commonly cunning villains are greedy, they become more of a villain character. Alright, moving on. The methodical, manipulative villain. They are commonly not in the front limelight. They are not, hurling lightning bolts or, causing mass destruction through their direct action right in the spotlight. They are behind, back in the shadows, pulling strings, manipulating people. A good, manipulative, like methodical, or like mastermind villain, you're not going to be able to see their actions. You can see the results of their actions, but you should not be able to see them doing them. Even if you suspect, even if you're like, you know what, that person is probably causing this entire crisis. You should not be able to prove anything. Or, even if you could prove, you should not be able to do it. Maybe this methodical mastermind villain is a king or a queen. Maybe they have absolute power, so they can do whatever they want, even if people know. Maybe they hide behind a guise of, benevolence. It really depends. I think, in my opinion, a mastermind type of villain should be methodical. They should be able to win that chess move because they plan 16 moves ahead, and they could do them all right now. They could do one move after another and completely obliterate their opponent. But a methodical mastermind villain makes them sweat. A mastermind villain, in my opinion, is a puppet master. And you can write them by thinking about the various different social circles and being evil for just a moment. Thinking, alright, this person that I know does not like vanilla flavored ice cream. How would I get them to eat vanilla flavored ice cream? Just think about all the possibilities and directions that your mind goes at that prospect. How do I become this mastermind? Plan ahead. Your book is you mastermind your book. How does your book's mastermind their plan? And I know I use that word a lot, but whatever. Now, moving on. The crazy villain. This is incredibly fun to write, but you have to be careful because crazy villains are kind of just like, if they're done wrong, I think that exactly characterizes them. They're kind of cheap and easy to do if you don't do them right. In my opinion, a crazy villain needs eventually a source for their craziness. You can't just have like, oh, this person is crazy and likes to murder people and laughs at being shot at. Like, no, there has to be eventually a reason why, or you have to have some spark of intelligence. And that's another thing. If you have a crazy villain, you can't have them just completely mad dog insane, because that's not a villain, that's like a henchman who just really enjoys what they do. No, a crazy villain needs to be just smart enough to be a threat, but not so smart that you think that the crazy is an act. Like a genuinely crazy villain, you need to know they are disturbed, and maybe their actions are unsettling. That, in my opinion, is what makes a good crazy villain. That no sane, normal person would do that, and yet here they are doing it. It's like a rebellion against nature, which sometimes people can get behind. You can have a crazy villain who actually ends up becoming a martyr. It's a great way to turn the tables on your hero, especially if you present this crazy villain as someone who would like to murder a lot of people, but hasn't. So you can actually create pity and sympathy for a crazy character. I use the term crazy just in like a person such as Joker from the DC universe. Obviously deranged. That's what I mean. Now, moving on to another character, and this one, okay, just like a violent villain to me is not very effective. You need something else besides a violent villain, but I like to have a violent villain with a realist, having someone who sees what is necessary and then will do anything to achieve it. I suppose the best way to do it is like a heartless villain. And these, in my opinion, are the absolutely most fun to write because you have a lot of backstory there. What made them heartless? Why are they that way? And if you can actually heartless villain or heartless heroes are really fun to write as well because they toe that line. And sometimes what might be necessary to a villain is actually heroic deed, but you have to spin it sometimes. You have to question yourself. A heartless villain, in my opinion, there needs to be a catalyst for that, and they can't just be completely broken. There has to be some sort of reason there, and then there has to be some limits to what they're not willing to do. Like, okay, maybe they burn down villages or nuke countries, but they cannot themselves murder, like, a little girl because their little girl died whenever she was young, and now they want to kill people for some reason because of that, and they're just completely heartless because the only thing that they ever loved in their world is gone, and seeing that reminds them of it. Basically a heartbroken character. You know, like, on the inside, they're just shattered, so they're dead. But you can do a heartless villain however you want, a completely stone cold one. In my opinion, to do that best, you have to create stark contrast between regular charitable actions and ones that they deem as unnecessary because they don't exactly follow through on their own agenda. You know, a decent person, you know, might give some money to someone that they knew for a fact, you know, only had a couple of days left to live, so they would do something that they wanted, you know. Or a heartless person or a heartless villain might not do that just because it doesn't serve their own goals, or they might. You know, a heartless villain, in my opinion, is a mixture between just being stone cold and also being the manipulative mastermind villain. In my opinion, you know, they have to be incredibly aware of what they want. You cannot have a villain who is stone cold who doesn't know what they want. That doesn't work out. Now, I hope this has all helped you understand the different kinds of villains, and that's not even all of them. That's not even close. I might even go on to list more of them in another video, but this has run on a long time. So, let me end it up by saying you should probably subscribe. If you don't, someone might go crazy on you and ask you why, and you'd have no response. Also, you can contact me at my website, www.arcstorm.com, or just leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought of this, what other villains you might like me to talk about, or that you just like in general. Now, as always, thank you for watching, and continue to enjoy.